welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters like myself and Josh. I'm Dan.
I am Josh.
And today's podcast, we're going to be covering a litany of things. We have all things quizzical, rantical, arrowantical, and podcastical. I'm going to go with that because we have a nice little teaser to hit because Josh got an email from somebody who has a new Earthdawn actual play podcast that we are here to boost the signal on. So take it away, Josh.
We'll start off with that. We'll start there. Okay. Actually meant to talk about this like 2 weeks ago because I got the message about it, but it completely slipped my mind. And then I meant to do a little add-on thing that I would tack on to the beginning or the end of one of the episodes that just recently dropped. And then that didn't happen because my life has been like
chaos.
Schedules changing in kids and needing to drive 2 hours to pick them up the day before they was supposed to go and pick them up. Anyway.
Life got in the way.
Talking about it now.
Yes.
I have mentioned in the past the Namegivers actual play podcast, which is continuing and doing wonderfully. I must admit that I do not really listen to it because I don't have a lot of time to listen to stuff. But in addition to that, the
crew there,
GM for the Namegivers podcast, is running a limited series, like half a dozen, 8 episodes, I think is what's planned, something along those lines, for the Thornvale podcast, which is another actual play podcast that does not normally do Earthdawn, like they do other games.
Yeah.
But through the 6 degrees of separation that is podcast entertainment and RPG stuff, I actually happen to know the Thornvale people separate from the Namegivers people, and when they met together, I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. Anyway, if you go to thornvalepodcast.com, you will be able to see the episodes that have been released. He says, estimated to be 8 to 10 episodes likely, so more of a mini-series than actually a one-shot.
Yeah.
Similar to how I did the quote-unquote one-shot for the Crit Show folks that actually ended up being like 5 episodes.
Yes. No, I think miniseries are perfect.
So, yeah, thornvalepodcast.com. Go check it out. Support them. Experience more Earthdawn actual play stuff. Again, I haven't listened to it. I will have it in my playlist to eventually get to. I'm trying to mainline and get caught up on some other stuff first. There will be, I think we'll probably drop it in at the end of this episode. We'll figure out where. Will get a little like 2 to 3 minute preview clip kind of thing. So there's that. So that's item number 1.
Yeah, we'll drop that at the end. And other than that, we have a quick email to get to. We only have one. What's wrong with you, slackers? We only have one email to get to at all. But this is from Tom. Hi, guys. It's Tom Laporta, the Foundry guy. I just wanted to reach out and let you know that I'm enjoying the podcast a whole bunch. I love how in-depth all the lore information is on the podcast and learn things all the time, even as a 25-plus year bar save veteran. I wanted to suggest that you do a show or two specifically about adventure and campaign building in Earthdawn. A game with this much lore and metaplot has some special needs in that area, and I feel like your thoughts on that would be interesting and valuable. I'll stop him here. Josh's thoughts would be interesting and valuable. I have nothing to add. Secondly,
that's not true.
I add 2 cents to this entire podcast. Josh is the 98 cents. If it's something you would be interested in, I also would be happy to come on the pod and talk about the VTT development of Earthdawn and give a few reasons why Earthdawn 4 on Foundry might be a good fit for our online Barsavians. Anyway, peace and keep up the good work, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Josh?
Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
So, yes, this is a subject I think that we keep getting emails about, but we've not actually dedicated an episode to it. I know we've gotten emails along these lines like 2 or 3 times before. It's like, hey, how about you talk about adventure and campaign development in Earthdawn?
We've kind of given little tidbits here and there, but not a full dedication to.
It's something that I probably need to actually work out some kind of plan. It is a lot easier for me to answer specific questions off the cuff because then they're addressing something specific that I can look up or draw out of the sewer grate that is my brain.
Agreed.
But just a general, hey, big topic. I do struggle a little bit because I need to find my through line, my input, where to begin, and the themes and concepts and ideas that I want to develop from there. So, yes.
I haven't quite mastered the Josh needs to land this plane hand signal that only he can see.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing. I think people maybe stress about it too much. I understand there is fascinating world building and lore and information and detail that is available as part of Earthdawn. From the earliest days to today, all of the neat stuff. Like we talked about elves and dragons and all sorts of stuff here recently, and that's like just a little piece of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that people perhaps stress about it too much. I think that it's really more important to build it slowly, to ease into it, especially if you've got new players. You don't want to overload them. Like, you want them to experience all the awesome.
Yes.
But also understand that it took 6 or 7 years in the first edition to develop all of that awesome. We've got 25 plus years of Earthdawn, both official and fan content and all of the stuff that has gone in along with that. And those of us who have been soaking in it for all of that time have all of this awesome that we want to share with people. But I think it's better to like give them little tastes, leave them wanting more, like develop something kind of smaller to start off, maybe with themes that you really want to explore or look at or examine or expose your players to, and then find out from their reactions what they're really interested in and kind of go from there. A campaign idea that I had at one point that I would potentially like to revisit was called Scavenger Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have talked about this on the show before. I don't know. I've talked about this before at some point. I don't know whether it was on this show or not.
I'll let you know.
But the idea was, because of course this was several years ago before 4th edition, before the Travar book was out and so forth, was that we knew that Travar had the founding tournament and that they would do this thing to help determine who would be in charge of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that as a campaign concept, one year, what they would do would be a scavenger hunt. They had the various teams. Each team would be provided with an airboat or a small airship, and all of the teams were given the same list of stuff that could be collected from various locations around Barsave, with kind of point values attributed to them based on how easy or difficult the people that came up with the list thought it would be. And some of the things that were on it were like callbacks, like, you know, one of the things was like dragon toenail clippings calling back to the portfolio of a dragon.
Yeah.
You know, like references like that. But the idea being that the campaign premise is you are a group of adepts that has been hired to basically go on this scavenger hunt to go to various places around Barsave, and you would have adventures in these different places that might be involved in how you came to get these various items, but you only had so much time and you needed to get back by a certain date, and whichever team had the most points at the end would do it. And so I had like looking at different places on the map and going, okay, they can get this item here, they can get this item here, here's another item, and some things that were just kind of generic, but they would need to come up with maybe a way that they could get it. Things like that.
Yeah.
And that seems to me like that would be a really kind of cool campaign premise kind of thing that would allow you as a GM to expose your group to different environments and different hooks and different themes
different
in Barsave.
Yeah.
And then find out what interests them.
Yeah, because you can touch on all those things, bring them back home, and then see where they want to go after that.
Right.
So, I agree with that. That's not a bad idea. Always did love a good scavenger hunt.
To land this plane, yes, maybe working up an actual outline or script for talking about campaign and adventure development for Earthdawn. It's a good idea. It's a good idea, and maybe we should do it sometime.
We'll get in there. Only thing I've ever done for all the pre-gen adventures is they follow like an if-then flow chart. If they do this, then take them here. If they do that, then go this way. That's how I read them.
I don't know how much of Tom's question is, how do you come up with an adventure? How do you write adventures?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's really the question that is being asked here. I think it's more, how do you bring the awesomeness of Barsave into a campaign? How do you choose what you're going to focus on? There's all this awesome, how can you pick? I think, I could be wrong. Tom, please feel free to
clarify.
Send a follow-up email, perhaps asking clarifying questions.
Yes.
And anybody else as well, if you have more specific guided questions, if we get a bunch of these, then we can do an episode that's focused on that.
We can do an email palooza on campaign and story construction. Yeah.
Second item,
yes.
As Tom mentioned, he is the Foundry guy.
He is.
Foundry is a VTT, a virtual tabletop, similar to Roll20. People are likely to be familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of at a very surface level of the same basic thing, which is to say that you've got a computer program that runs and like you can put maps up and have tokens on the map to indicate where people are. So you've got a virtual battle map like you would have as at the table if you were using minis and terrain and stuff like that. These often have computerized automated character sheets that allow you to make and do stuff with your character, and some of them have a significant amount of automation. So it will actually walk you through. You will just check off, okay, this round, I want to use Tiger Spring. And then when you just click roll initiative, it automatically, based on the armor that you've already entered into your sheet and your decks and your talents and everything, boom, it just rolls the dice for you and shows you the results. And some of the really advanced stuff potentially could be tracking strain and karma usage and all sorts of things like that.
Totally.
Tom has made a character sheet for Earthdawn 4th edition for use in the Foundry virtual tabletop. And as part of that...
Well done, sir.
Yes, it is good. I've taken a look at it. I haven't really played with it much, but he showed Kyle and I, we did a sort of meeting with him, and he showed a bunch of the stuff that he was working on. This was a month or two back.
Mm-hmm.
So he's done that. Now, the basic sheet, which is free, it's got sort of the automation built into it, and it kind of calculates the values of stuff automatically, but you still need to like type in the talents that your character knows and what attribute they're connected to and strain and things like that. It doesn't automatically fill it in. We do, however, actually, as of this recording released 2 days ago, there is now a compendium, I think is the term for it, for the Earthdawn 4th edition player's guide in the Foundry tabletop. So you can pay money at the FASA Games website.
Rightfully
FASAgames.com shop. You pay, it's like the same price as the PDF.
Mm-hmm.
You get a key, and the key unlocks within the Foundry environment all of the player's guide information, so it automatically will fill in. It's got all of the talent progressions and all of the strain and blah, blah, blah of all the talents and spells and gear and everything that is in
all the
player's
mechanics
guide.
Behind all of that to make the sheet work.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got it yourself and you're typing it in manually, you kind of only need to type it in once, but that's still a lot of data entry work. This does it automatically and connects things together. Only one person needs to actually have the compendium for a group to be able to use it. It's basically whoever's account you are signed into in Foundry. If you're using Foundry, you kind of know what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
You don't need to have everybody at the table spend the 20 or $25, whatever it is, to get the thing. Just one person does, so you've got a group with 5 or 6 players. Everybody pays $5
Shipping and $4,
you've got access to this. We are going to be releasing more compendia. There's going to be one for the Game Master's Guide, which will provide already made
creatures.
Virtual NPC things with the stats and everything for creatures and tokens and dragons and horrors and everything that's in the GM's guide, and thread items, and all of that stuff will be pre-built in.
Yeah.
There's going to be one for the companion, so all of your higher circle stuff and masks and so forth, so you can modify the creatures. So like there's plans. Mystic Pass is obviously going to get one at some point.
Questers as well. Yeah.
So this is obviously an ongoing project, but we're going to have all of this stuff, at least in theory, will become available. We kind of would like to see this stuff as well for other tabletops. A lot of this kind of requires people who are willing to do it and to work to make it doable. Foundry just happened to be the first one that succeeded.
Yeah.
The API for Roll20 is a little bit clunky to work with, apparently.
Gotcha.
And so it's, I guess, a little bit more finicky to use and set up.
That happens.
So yeah, Tom's good people. Tom did a lot of work, him and the other guy or two that he was working with, to get all of that stuff and build the databases for the compendia and so forth. It's really cool, and it may actually be something that I use in the future when appropriate.
Nice. Good on you, Tom. Thanks for doing all the heavy lifting on that one.
Okay. Next item.
Okay. Josh has a little bit of a soapbox he wants to get on here for a quick second.
Well,
I'm teasing Josh. Something came up recently, and Josh has an opinion he wants to add about it, which is just fine.
I do my Dennis Miller. I don't want to go off on a rant here.
Yeah.
There I'm dating myself like a late 80s, early 90s
You and me
stand-up
both.
thing.
I used to love that show.
Anyway. So on the FASA Games Discord, end of last week, over the weekend, sometime relatively recently as we are recording this, somebody new to the Discord came on and was asking questions about how to handle the spellcasting methods as reflected in the second Earthdawn novel, Mother Speaks. Now,
what, 1994?
93, 94, yeah, something like
Somewhere
that.
in there, yeah. Okay.
This novel is set chronologically back at the time of the First Theron War.
Mm-hmm.
The book opens with the Therons in the First Theron War sort of arriving, and it kind of revolves a little bit around the First Theron War and the Siege of Thrall. Because it is set in the past, one of the conceits of the book, which kind of ties into the actual conceits of the setting, is that the spell matrix as a talent at that point did not exist as a separate, purely astral entity. Mm-hmm. That in order to safely cast her spells, Reliana, who is an elementalist, needed to have her robes with all of the patterns and sigils for the spells that she knew woven into the designs of her robe. And so this person who kind of liked that idea, I did not go back and reread the thread because it was like super long. Anyway, was asking about reflecting that, like how would you do that within the rules, because that's not really how it works in 4th edition. A lot of people did some stuff where they were talking about, well, matrix items and enchanting and all of this kind of semi-complex stuff that would be involved. And I think some of it was derived in part from the fact that people didn't necessarily really know what was going on with the novel and how things worked in that, which is fine. Not expecting everybody to have read everything. You know, unlike me, who back in the 90s didn't have a life.
27 years, so.
But that was the general idea. Like, I want to reflect this older style of spellcasting within my game. How would I do that? For myself, I think that the people who were honestly trying to be helpful were going about it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Driven largely by the sense of simulationism that is kind of permeates a lot of the rules and lore marriage of Earthdawn.
Yeah.
That a lot of things mechanically have a reflection within the setting, and there are a lot of things within the setting that have a reflection mechanically. The idea that they physically need the robe, therefore these are matrix items, or this is an enchanted robe of some sort. In order to do this, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I don't know. That's not the right metaphor, but basically not taking from what I consider to be the best approach, which for me is very, very simple. I think the requirement for the magician to have their spells woven into their robes in order to safely cast spells, to not have to use raw magic.
Yeah.
Is best reflected by not changing much of anything as far as the rules go. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be using the 4th edition rules, you get 2 free matrices. And what the matrix is an attunement to a spell pattern that allows you to cast it safely without raw magic. Mm-hmm. You could have all of the spells that they know on their robes, similar to how they might have a grimoire or something like that, but that there are only X spells, however many matrices they have, that are attuned and safe to cast at any time. The only thing that you would change is adding basically the narrative requirement that in order for them to take advantage of these talents, they need to have their robes with them. Otherwise, they don't and can only avail themselves of raw casting. That basically solves the problem there, that you just handle it like that you just add a little bit of a narrative requirement. And maybe there are some trade-offs that you give in exchange because of the conceit of the story, of the physical requirements, much like spells would need material components or specific gestures or words or whatever in order to successfully cast them.
Yeah.
So maybe you give a little bit of leeway there or something along those lines, but you don't need to go to the lengths of, let's figure out what systems we can use to mimic something that end up requiring a whole lot of extra work and legend points and really don't actually allow the caster to do what it seemed to me the original question was trying to get at, because you would need to have high thread weaving in order to bond all these matrix items and blah, 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 blah. At that point, it means that you can't do that as a low circle caster, which is defeating the purpose of what I think they were trying to go for, which is to say,
simple question. I
just want them to have the requirement of the robes in order to safely cast. Okay, then make that a requirement. There's nothing much more complex than that. Like much the same way that I will often take the stat block of a creature and reskin it, like just give it a different description using the exact same numbers.
Yeah.
To do what needs to be served in a story. Like, for example, hey, let's say that you are running an adventure and you have a Jehuthra as a monster, as an enemy, as an adversary in that adventure, but you discover that you have a player. This is something like this is especially true at like convention games. You discover that one of the players at your table is like super arachnophobic. The Jehuthra, as basically like a twisted spider monster, is going to like legitimately and honestly freak them out and cause them stress and distress, which we do not want to have happen. People play games to have fun. That doesn't ruin the adventure. Assuming that you kind of know enough in advance, you don't need to make it you may change it from a spider monster to a different kind of monster, but use the exact same numbers.
Yeah. That's all you need.
Like make it a bear monster or something. I mean, there might be some details that you'll need to tweak, like if you're dealing with webs or other kind of things like that.
Same thing.
Well,
just whatever.
Obviously, circumstances will dictate what you need to do.
Yes.
But you can just use the stuff that already exists and just put a different coat of paint on it.
Yeah. So for the spellcasting thing, there's
a great deal of narrative freedom that is there that you don't necessarily... Look, I understand some people are totally into simulationism and hex crawling and how many barrels can fit in the hold of a riverboat.
The exact detail.
All of that kind of stuff. I understand that people are into that. I'm not so much. Because in all honesty, let's talk economics for a moment. Let's talk prices. Let's talk silver and gold and orichalcum and elemental coins and the prices that are in the player's guide for stuff and trade and all sorts of stuff. Honestly, if you try and examine the economy of Bar Save, it's going to fall apart because it wasn't created to be a rational economy. It's something that allows you to kind of have prices and get maybe a rough idea of what stuff is supposed to, within the framework of an adventuring group, kind of cost them in terms of things. And there are systems in there for rarity and like actually making tests to see if a location has an item that they're after and all kinds of like subsystems like that, which are fine. But looking at the pricing and looking at various aspects that have been created in various times for the source books for Earthdawn and trying to no prize them by trying to come up with something that makes sense for it and going, this doesn't make any sense. Well, ultimately, it's not supposed to make sense. It's just supposed to serve its purpose as something within the game.
Yeah.
And yes, when we are developing, like when when Morgan was working on the rules for enchanting and mining true elements and things like that, we kind of had to look at, well, what would the consequences of this be in terms of how would it affect the setting on a grand scheme of things if this is something that is commonly available, and if not, and so on and so forth. We don't understand the economy of our own areas, let alone trying to come up with wholly consistent fictional versions thereof for places that have things that don't actually exist.
Yeah, we're trying to tell a story, not necessarily be economists with make up our own fake economy
again,
somewhere.
I understand that there are people that are into that sort of thing, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And we try and, with our development, try and satisfy that as much as we can. But there comes a point where we just need to say good enough and go on from there.
Move on to the next. That'll happen. Fair. On to our last and final topic. Last and final, that's the same thing. Whatever. I'm going to work on the thesaurus here in a minute or so. We got a suggestion from Lou himself to go ahead and talk about one more thing of aspect of dragons we hadn't actually talked about yet. So we're going to skip Mountain Shadow for now. Next episode, somewhere down the line.
Maybe.
Because we haven't heard from anybody if yes or no they want us to talk about dragons.
Yeah, the only person who actually responded to our query about, hey, do you want us to talk about the great dragons more, was Lou, after listening to the episode, saying, hey, I think that would be really cool, but you didn't talk about a whole bunch of dragon powers. There are more dragon powers than the ones that you talked about. Why don't you talk about those?
So we're gonna.
Part of the reason that we didn't talk about those so much is that because we, in the outline and the stuff that Dan was working up for those episodes, he was going off of the Dragon sourcebook and didn't really get into the mechanics and the powers so much.
Plus, we try to keep the episodes at about an hour. And we were running long.
Wanted to cover the setting stuff and not get into the mechanical weeds too much.
Yeah.
But in the 4th edition player's guide, there are 6 pages of dragon powers.
So once again, we're going to talk about how badass dragons are.
Yeah, let's continue to talk about how awesome dragons are so that they're happy with us.
Yes. So, Lou, this one's for you. This last half hour is entirely for you. We'll get to because again, we haven't heard if anybody doesn't want us to talk about dragon personalities, which they're slated for. So they're coming whether you like them or not, until we get a whole bunch of no, please don't.
Yeah, we'll talk about them.
Yeah. We're getting there.
Eventually.
That's coming.
I'm sure.
That's coming. Yeah. 2 more episodes. We've talked in the past about some of the dragon powers. We've alluded to them. Dragon speech, dragon sight, a little bit of dragon breath, because we covered the whole, it doesn't need to be a gland in the dragon's throat somewhere. They're just magical creatures. They can breathe fire. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, on what dragons actually possess as other powers.
We'll maybe touch on some of the mechanics around those, at least as they are presented in 4th edition. But those are just a small selection of the things that a dragon...
Exactly. So one of the really cool aspects, like I said, I've covered this, I've said this before. Somebody in the original release of Earthdawn 1st edition back in 93 said, this is the game that gets dragons right. And I believe one of those things is the dragon's armored scales, because the way armor works in Earthdawn, dragons are A, not only hard to hit, but B, if you hit them, you got to do some serious damage to overcome the armor. And that was way back when they had armor defeating hits. Now there's no armor defeating hits.
Right.
So armored scales.
Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit of development history, I guess, with some of these as well.
Yeah.
Original flavor Earthdawn, 1st edition and 2nd edition Earthdawn, the way that armor defeating hits worked was that if you rolled an excellent or better success on the attack test, which was quite frequently about double the base target number, but not always. It depended on what it was. But, for like a difficulty number of 10, for a physical defense of 10, a 19 or better was an armor defeating hit, and that meant that it completely ignored all of the target's armor. Dragons and some other creatures, their version of improved armor or armored scales was that it didn't require an excellent success, it required an extraordinary success, which was one result level even higher than normal. But you would still completely overcome the target's armor if you did that. You just needed to roll even higher.
Yeah. Really
with the change in 4th edition for how extra successes worked and the armor defeating mechanic, you can spend, by default, each additional success on your attack test deals extra damage. And so the idea being that extra damage helps overcome whatever the target's armor is at a base rate of 2 extra steps of damage per extra success. The dragon's armored scales and other creatures that have similar abilities, rather than being an extra 2 damage per success, it's only an extra 1. You are still doing some extra damage, but you're not doing as much extra to overcome that armor. What that means is that we don't need to have the armor values for dragons going redonkulously high in order for them to withstand the likely high attack test results that are going to be rolled against them. What was referred to in old versions of Shadowrun as staging, where depending on the weapon, you needed so many successes in order to improve the damage. It's the same kind of idea. So instead of the default +2, it reduces the amount by 1. Now that is, of course, potentially counteracted by any talents or abilities the adept might have that might increase how much extra damage they do.
Yeah.
That's the basic idea of that. But dragons have heavy armor. They have high armor ratings in general. Armored Scales is a power that they can have on top of that makes it so that they, even on really good hits, their armor is more effective.
I just had something this past gaming session with my Game Master where my dice exploded like they have never exploded before, and I got 8 extra successes on my dice. So I got to add 16 steps to my damage. If I were going against this dragon, it would only be 8 steps to my damage. So there's your scenario. Dispel Magic, because again, dragons are highly magical creatures.
Yes.
This is kind of a no-brainer that they should have this. Oh, I see what you're doing. Bink. No, you're not anymore. There you are. Dispel it.
The dragon Dispel Magic ability is very similar to the now wizard talent of the same name. The advantage that dragons have is that their Dispel Magic ability works a lot more like the old Dispel Magic ability from first edition.
Oh, nice.
In that it can also affect creature powers and other stuff that the basic Dispel Magic talent no longer can do. As of right now, the standard Dispel Magic, which is a first circle wizard talent, can affect talents with a sustained duration and spells, but it can't affect creature powers or horror powers or anything like that that's not really adept magic. Part of that was to avoid treading on the ground that is now covered by Suppress Curse, which is a Dispel Magic ability that intentionally, but in a limited fashion, gets rid of other effects for a limited period of time. To kind of avoid overlap of abilities there. But the dragon's Dispel Magic ability can also use to dispel the magical effects of creature powers, including horror and dragon powers. It also does not require a standard action the way that the talent does. Dispel Magic on steroids.
Yeah, I think they do it. There you are. Have a nice day. One of these days, there should be a power to dispel items, but that's just me. But Morgan's...
There might be some kind of stuff along those lines.
Yeah, I'm sure Morgan's working on something.
I think it would have to be a custom ability.
And telling me to hush it. Disrupt Fate. This one sounds rather ominous that dragons can do. Insert evil maniacal laughter here.
Disrupt Fate allows the dragon to spend a point of karma to force a target to reroll their dice.
This reminds me of a horror power I've come across.
There's a similar horror power called Cursed Luck.
Yes.
The difference with the horror power is that it automatically turns the results of dice to 1. It doesn't force a reroll.
Yeah.
It just automatically changes the result.
Yeah.
But Disrupt Fate, if they have karma, I don't like the result of that, so reroll it.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds, like I said, ominous. Just...
The results of the second test stand and cannot be re-disrupted, so if the second test ends up being better
Good
that's
on you.
tough on the dragon.
Exactly.
But the dragon can choose to make that test after the result is known. So if the warrior goes in and rolls really, really high on their attack test, higher than would be sort of like normal for average.
Yeah.
Not only would the dragon have armored scales that would be able to soak that damage better, but the dragon could just say, no, you didn't hit me that well, and force the warrior to reroll.
Yes. Because dragons are not nice.
It actually isn't specified in the rules.
Is there any errata?
But
okay.
What I'm saying is that if like the character had spent a karma point or something on the test, I would not force them to spend an additional karma point to reroll the karma. I think I would still include that in the result. So this is something that, oh, you rolled really, really well. We'll roll again and hope you're as lucky. If not, tough.
Yeah. And I'm with you. As the game master, I wouldn't make you burn that karma point and do it again. I'll give you your karma for free. That's not a jerk move.
It does require the dragon to spend a karma point to do it. Alternately, if the dragon is maybe an ally in the situation and somebody rolls really, really badly, the dragon could spend a karma point to get them to roll again and hopefully get a better result. It actually can work both ways.
It can. As long as the dragon's your ally. If they're your enemy.
Or if they've got minions or whatever that are like fighting in the thing with them, then they could spend the karma to get their allies another roll.
They're minions.
As long as the dragon has karma to spend,
Yeah. This next one sounds really familiar, and it should. I think it's based upon the Beastmaster talent, Dominate Beast. And again, should work kind of the same, I think.
Yeah. Dragons in the fiction are given the ability to control and dominate creatures. This is similar to the Beastmaster talent, but again, much like Dispel Magic, is on steroids.
Yes.
Dominate Beast the talent does not normally allow a Beastmaster to control multiple creatures at once. The dragons can.
Up to their rank and their total step in Dominate Beast. So not even rank, total step. That's a lot.
It's, again, a power that dragons have in the fiction, and so they have it, and it's better than what adepts can typically do.
As it should be. Now, here's the one we're going to spend a little bit of time on, I can tell, because this one has its own little table and about 4 paragraphs of description on Dragon Breath. And we've already covered it's magical and not, some gland or flammable sack of fluid and all that stuff. No, it's magic. It's a magical dragon breath.
Yep. It covers a 90-degree arc in front of the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
The distance that the cone extends out is based on how much strain the dragon is willing to take. It does cause strain for the dragon to do it, at least by the default rules. 1 point of strain for 10 yards, 5 for 20, 15 for 40 yards, and 30 points of strain for 60 yards, which is quite a distance. They make a dragon breath test, compared to the mystic defense of everybody that is within the area of effect. Anybody who is affected takes damage equal to the result of the test, reduced by their physical armor, but any items that are caught, armor degrades, like it loses armor rating if it's caught within the effect, and if its ratings are reduced to 0, then it's slagged and destroyed.
Done.
Yeah. If the item isn't completely destroyed, it can eventually be repaired, but Dragon Breath is nasty. Just as an example.
I mean, it's created magically, but it is actually real fire. So combustible things will burn up and destroy and blow up. So if you're hitting gunpowder, should it exist, it will actually, grade A, bang, bang, boom type stuff.
Just as an example, the sample Western Dragon in the GM's guide has Dragon Breath of 25. Step 25 is what they are rolling for both the effect test to see if it actually goes on and how much damage it ends up doing.
Yeah, that's higher than anything I've rolled so far, Step 25. So with you there. We've covered Dragon Sight, but we can talk about the mechanics of it in this one actually. So Dragon Sight is next. This is the ability to view astral space and patterns in depth better than most wizards or windlings could do on their astral sight.
It's like astral sight, but better. It doesn't cost the dragon strain to use it.
Yeah. A little bit more.
They basically rolled Dragon Sight for the purposes of astral sensing, where somebody else would use astral sight.
They're going to see some stuff, no doubt there. Dragon Speech. Again, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is the mental link that they can just project thoughts into your head to talk with you or read your thoughts, whether you want them to or not.
This also has some additional abilities. It can also function as a spirit talk or elemental tongues test. If the dragon is dealing with a spirit in some way. It is also the dragon ability that allows them to summon spirits if they want to summon spirits. Rather than having their own summon talent, they can just use dragon speech.
Yeah. Talk them into
to
existence.
Summon a spirit. I mean, it's communication and summoning and so forth all rolled into one.
And this one is like a song title from about 36 bands. Fear, as in to be afraid. So this is the intimidation and terrifying presence of grr and stuff.
Dragons have a very impressive aura, and if they wish to focus it on someone, they can inflict them with penalties and make them not want to take hostile action against the dragon at all. It works very similarly to the Nethermancer talent Frighten, except it's based on the dragon's charisma step as opposed to
and what is
willpower, which is what I think...
What is the common dragon's charisma step? Just since we brought that up as an example previously.
Just as an example,
yeah.
The Western dragon's base charisma step is 15, typically with a fear step of 25.
There you go. So again, in the mid-20s.
Yeah, each success imposes a -2 penalty on the target for any tests that they might want to make against the dragon.
Yeah, I can just see that going very badly for the person who's the recipient of fear. Next up, Karma Cancel, which again reminds me of horror powers.
Yeah, more abilities for dragons to mess with people's ability to do stuff.
Yeah, because, they do.
They make a test against the target. If successful, the dragon can spend a point of its karma to override the use of karma by the target.
Nasty.
1 for 1, so if the target is able to spend multiple points of karma, then the dragon must spend an equal number of points to cancel all of that karma usage. If you've got a dragon with the full suite of powers here, oh, I'm going to cancel your ability to use karma. Oh, and you still rolled well. Well, I'm going to make you re-roll it again. Oh,
yeah.
My scales are super tough anyway. When you start seeing all of these powers that are available to most adult dragons,
why would you go mess with them?
Yeah, it's going to require some serious efforts, planning and tactics and
lucky dice
stuff to go against.
And by the way, Karma Cancel does not require an action from the dragon. They just do it.
No.
Because
they need to make a test in order to successfully do it in the first place. But again, we're talking like probably steps upper 20s, mid to upper 20s in terms of the steps that they need to make against the target's mystic defense. Now, obviously, if you're talking about a high circle, like Warden or Master to your characters, going against a dragon are going to have decently high defense ratings. But even those have limits.
Yeah. So on to karma points. Now, everybody gets karma points, but I think... Go ahead and keep up the common Western dragon there, Josh. I want to read this sentence out loud to everybody. The value given in parentheses after the karma power in the dragon's description indicates the dragon's karma step.
No, that's an error.
Oh, okay. Wanted to make sure then. But I figured that was an error. I wanted to make sure people understood that.
Dragons and horrors and some horror constructs and so forth have a karma ability. So they have karma points just like an adept does.
Yeah.
The difference being that they are not limited necessarily to a d6 karma step. There are 2 values given in the karma stat, in the stat blocks for karma. The first number is their karma step, what they roll when they add a karma point. The number in parentheses is the number of points that they have.
Gotcha.
So the standard stat block for a Western dragon has a karma step of 10. So it'll roll 2d8 karma when it spends a karma point to enhance its abilities.
And the pool of karma points
it has 40 points available.
Gotcha.
Generally, much like horrors, dragons can spend a karma point basically on any roll they want to make.
So, wanted to clarify that paragraph for anybody looking at and reading it the way I did, verbatim, but it's a slight error in printing. So, we got that cleared up. Lair sense. This is the I know where you are when you're around me in my home.
Yeah, this is essentially an enhanced kind of awareness/perception test that if successful, the dragon knows where people are within its lair.
Yeah. I love that they set traps. I do. I just love that dragons set traps.
It does require, if somebody takes an action in the dragon's lair, the dragon can make lair sense as a response to that to determine whether they noticed that the thing happened.
Gotcha. That's nice.
Which is frequently why dragons will have traps or minions or so forth in sort of the outer layers of their lair to force people to make tests and therefore forcing them to take actions and the more that they take, the dragon is more likely to notice that something is going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it doesn't cost them any strain or action or anything to do it. They just... Did I notice that this thing was happening? Yes, I did.
And lest you think that Dragon Breath is the only offensive weapon that dragons have, other than passive...
Beyond their claws and bite.
And claws and stuff like that. Yeah, the physical stuff. They also have poison sometimes. Some
dragons do have venom.
Yes.
Which works like any other poison, works like creature poison. Frequently, dragon venom is just does additional damage. But sometimes... They might have a paralytic or a debilitating poison instead.
Yeah.
That is completely up to the individual dragon, and perhaps advanced or older dragons might be able to choose what kind of poison they do.
Yeah.
But the details would be in as part of the stat block or that you would come up with for the animal.
Yeah. And some don't necessarily have poison in their fangs. Some have a stinger on their tail. So just...
Right. Like
or
the wyvern, for example.
Claws. Anyway, one of those things. Unless, again, you think that armored scales, if you defeat those, that you've finally gotten a hit on them. Some dragons have the power of regeneration.
Yeah. Some dragons have the ability to spend a recovery test in combat, similar to, say, using the Fireblood talent, that allows them to make a recovery test and heal damage.
Mm-hmm.
It also requires them to spend a karma point, and the karma does not add into the total healed.
It's just the success of the test. But yeah.
But they can also use it to heal a wound in combat. It doesn't heal damage in that case, it just heals the wound, but still...
Yeah. If you were lucky enough to get a wound on a dragon, it probably won't last long. So, one of those things.
One power, actually, that is not on this list that I think probably should be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It would not surprise me if there are dragons that would have resist pain.
Yeah.
In order to ignore wound penalties. That is not something that was listed as part of the suite of powers for dragons in earlier editions, which is why it didn't make this list.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that with everything else that's going on here and their stonkingly high wound thresholds and all of the other powers and stuff, that's kind of just overkill.
Superfluous.
A Western dragon, for example, has a wound threshold of 40. So
if you can
armor, you still need to do 40 points of damage in order to cause a wound. I think maybe at that point resist pain
is superfluous.
They've got 9 recovery tests.
Yeah.
So they can use regeneration to heal a wound. Again, you start stacking all of these powers and listing all of the things that they are capable of doing, and the potential that one has to deal with them, and the understanding of how big a deal it is that the Therans actually managed to kill a dragon or two back in the days of the Orichalcum Wars is a testament to their ability. Understanding, of course, that in the course of doing so, the Therans actually lost a behemoth to a dragon.
It's kind of tit for tat in that case. Oh, yeah, we took one down, but look what it cost you. Look what it cost you. Now, dragons, of course, have talents. Any talent listed in the book, they probably
talents
have.
And skills. It is possible that and I think resist pain would perhaps fall under
a talent.
That umbrella of, and if there's other stuff that you want them to be able to do that are in the rules as talents or skills, they just pick that for them. Yeah. That's fine. They can do that too.
Exactly. So not hard, because again, they also get spell casting, which is also a talent, and dragon's spell casting works a little bit, I think, more efficiently.
Yeah, they don't have to use matrices. They do, for balance reasons, need to weave threads. They're casting a spell, something that's in the books, they need to weave the threads as if they normally would. They just use spell casting as the thread weaving. They don't have separate thread weaving talent. Kind of simplifies things in that way. And they don't use matrices. They raw cast, essentially, all the time. But they're very high natural mystic armor, and frequently they're doing it in their lairs, which are safe areas. Basically means that, for the most part, unless something goes drastically wrong, raw casting doesn't really affect them at all.
Yeah. Because they're not necessarily...
If they're in an area where raw casting would affect them, they would fall back on other abilities like Dragon Breath and Regeneration and all sorts of other things that they can do that are not affected at all by raw matter.
In any way,
or astral taint.
Yeah, because it says hatchlings need to weave the normal number of threads. Adults need to weave half the normal number of threads, rounding down. And great dragons don't have to weave at all. So, yeah. Just know who you're messing with, or, take your chances as to who you're messing with. Of course, since they get spellcasting, they get spells and talents and skills. So onto the other powers. Suppress magic, which is different than dispel.
Yet another I'm going to mess with you dragon superiority bit.
Yeah.
They prevent a target from using magic. They make a test, and each success on the test reduces the steps of the target's magical abilities by 2.
Ouch.
You were actually saying so this affects magical talents, damage from magical weapons, any other magic use.
Yeah, so that'll take care of the magic items you're hitting them with.
If they're using it on a thread suit of armor, the penalties cannot reduce the defense that it provides below the normal amount that armor would provide. So if you've got magical chain mail, for example, and a dragon uses suppressed magic on it, all of the bonuses from threads would go away, but it would still provide the base
original
6 or 7 armor that chainmail normally does. Yeah. And then the dragon breathes on you. It doesn't protect as much, and it's, and it melts into slag, and there you go.
And you're in a coffin. You're in a big...
The example that they give is a threaded troll sword enhanced with forged weapon cannot have its damage step reduced to less than strength plus 6, because that's the base damage for the item. But it would affect the magical enhancement from that, not just from threads, but also from the weaponsmith talent.
Yeah. I just got ahead of myself. That's all.
Yeah.
So yeah, not only can they dispel magic with your talents and your spells, they can now suppress magic from your items that you're using as well. Because they're dragons, why wouldn't they? That's what they do. And the last one listed here is Wing Beat. And this is, I think...
Dragons have wings, or those dragons that have wings can use their wings to create a fierce gust of wind that will knock their opponents down and potentially back as well.
Yeah.
Classic dragon thing.
Yeah, it's like the Hulk thunderclap. So...
Yep.
Yeah. Seen that before.
Dragons are strong, tough, magically potent. They have a lot of moving parts, are very complex. It is possible to defeat a dragon.
Just not highly likely.
But yeah, it requires a lot of power, a lot of planning, a healthy dose of luck.
Yeah, good dice.
Yeah. The dragon is going to should be doing everything in its power to mess with your ability to actually do anything to it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I would love to just take the stat block of a dragon and throw it up against a party just to give them the example. Here's how much it's going to not work for you.
Yeah.
To take on this dragon. But I think that would be a fun thing to do. Any final thoughts on dragon powers or anything we did not cover about dragons before we get into the personalities of the great dragons in an episode or two?
Well, and in that list of powers that we went through, that doesn't even include and cover some of the special maneuvers that some dragons have. Like the Western dragon has a horn sweep and a tail sweep.
Yeah.
Which do similar things to like the wing beat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, man, lots of stuff. Lots of dragon stuff.
Yeah. How's that, Lou? We covered enough for you?
There is some really impressive stuff that they can do, and you start listing those like disrupt fate and suppress magic and karma cancel, and their numbers are impressive enough.
Yes.
Before you start getting into that.
Mm-hmm.
And you start adding that on top of it. Basically, you need to hope that you survive long enough perhaps to drain the dragon's resources to get to the point where that is. But then again, our standard off-the-rack adult Western dragon has an unconsciousness rating of 172.
Whew. Again, after you defeat their armor, get your extra successes, which are only halved, and maybe start whittling that number down. Maybe. Because you got to at least pull up more than 40 at a time to get through the armor. So if you're getting 41, 42, and 43, you're only hitting them for 1, 2, and 3 points, maybe. So you're going to be there all day whittling down 170-some. To get them unconscious, not even dead.
Right.
So that's a numbers game. Try your luck. I think you'd have better luck with a one-armed bandit in Vegas. But that's just me. So, folks, if you have any questions for us, and please email us. We're getting a little bit light on the email list coming in here. So please, we'd love to do another email palooza and pick Josh's sewer-like trap brain. You can email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And please do so. Any final thoughts, Josh?
No. I poured all my thoughts out earlier.
Fair. That's what we're here to do on the podcast, is pick Josh's brain. Folks, until next time, it is time for you not to go challenge the dragon for your legend.
Good night, everybody.
Hi there, folks. Just wanted to show you a little bit of a preview of something new. I have been recording sessions with the cast of Thornvale, a new one-shot adventure of Earthdawn. Episodes for this will be rolling out bi-weekly and have already started as of last Monday. So, on Hope you enjoy the little preview, but if you'd like to actually listen to the full episodes, you can go download it by looking up the Thornvale podcast or go to thornvalepodcast.com.
Hello, and welcome to something new. This is going to be very interesting. We are going to be playing an Earthdawn game. Do you want to go ahead and say hello, Rob?
Hello.
Hey, so Rob is going to be our guest GM for this campaign, and it is going to be super, super fun. Campaign is a little bit of a strong term for this. We're going to play a one-shot, and it's going to be lots of fun. But
in the center of Barsave, it is a lush ecosystem with many secrets, both unnatural and natural. It is raining heavily in the center of a small hamlet. We see two figures running, seemingly for their lives. They both stop suddenly as an unnaturally deep voice booms out. They don't realize it, but they're the only two that can hear it. Tell this commission of yours that Care Flaxworth and the whole of the Emerald Valley shall no longer be their concern. Wesley, your character, what's your character's name, by the way?
His name is actually Saliak. Andrew,
would you like to introduce your character?
Yes, so I am playing a character whose name is Thravek Deep Delver.
Why don't we go next we're going to shift over to Susanna's character.
Hi.
What's your character's name, by the way? Let's start with that.
Mixie Brambleroot.
Nixie, like with an N?
Mixie, with an M.
Okay.
With an M as in M&M.
And what is Mixie?
Mixie is a windling.
And, Hannah, how would you like to enter?
As dramatically as possible.
That's what I figured.
Oh boy.
Go ahead and describe your entrance.
If she is running late, she's probably just gonna give the door a kick. If it swings inward, she's just gonna kick it right open and tumble on in dramatic fashion.
And what does your character look like?
Yeah, so I am a Tiskrang, so like the kind of reptilian dinosaur type creature.
Third, fourth circle? How far are you?
I happen to be a swordmaster of the fourth circle. If you must. I have studied the ways of the blade for many years.
Okay. And you? Looks at the dwarf.
I am a weaponsmith of the fourth circle as well.
Good. Strong adepts, I like this. She looks at Kinemea and goes, "You're not an air sailor, are you? And you, little one?"
Oh, well, I'm an archaeologist, but I guess the thing you probably care about is that I'm a wizard of the fourth circle.
And I think we're going to end it there.
Oh man.
Oh,
I'm very curious.
Awesome.
What does it mean? I need to know.